Make life an auto zone of growth and development. That's the key. Just always want to be in position yourself to succeed. Hey everybody, Dr. Dan here, and I guide students to be smart about higher education and live a life that matters. And the video for this week's Wisdom for the Week is titled, Get in the Zone of Proximal Development. Okay, fancy words, and it's the first part of a three-part series that I'm going to do on zone, flow, and flourishing. So, in a galaxy far, far away, there was Luke Skywalker and Yoda, and you probably, a long time ago, you've heard about that through the Star Wars series. And if you're not familiar with that terms, that means nothing to you, but if you are, if you have any kind of familiarity, I think everybody's seen a picture of Yoda and Luke Skywalker. So these two go, Luke Skywalker's training to be a Jedi Knight, and he's kind of called to this planet where Yoda is, and Yoda is the master teacher. So all that Zone of Proximal Development is, it's a theory of cognitive development by a guy named Lev Vygotsky. And so he had this plan, or this program or theory that said that if you get in this kind of zone, and he defines it, gives you some definitions, and we're using Luke Skywalker and Yoda as an example of how you get in this zone of proximal development that works really well with teaching and training and getting people up to speed on some kind of topic or whatever. So the first thing that Yoda does is he assesses Luke. First, he kind of knows through the Force that Luke is got some Jedi Knight potential in him, so he draws him to this planet. Now, we don't know that teachers or trainers would have that, but they kind of get a feel and a knack for students that have capabilities, or what their capabilities are, whatever level they are at. So draws them to this planet, and then once he gets them there, he assesses them one-on-one and tests Luke's patience and maturity. So he acts like a little madman, this little creature that's irritating, and sees what Luke's patience is. And Luke doesn't do real well on that, but eventually Yoda decides, well, yep, he's worth training. We're going to take him for the training. So then the training gets involved, and there's a high level of involvement on Yoda's part with Luke. As a matter of fact, on one part of the training, Yoda he's hanging on to Luke's back. That's how close he is, and that's how close, not that close, but that's the way a lot of teachers are in that first part of the zone. When you get into this zone, now the zone is defined to this range. It's on this side of boredom, and it's on the other side of overwhelm. So you get in this zone that you're not bored, you're not overwhelmed, and when you first get in this zone, it's going to be a high level of challenge because you're not familiar with this stuff. Just like Luke wasn't familiar with levitating and, you know, doing flips and working with this lightsaber and all these kind of things that are Star Wars terminology, but basically you get the gist that he wasn't familiar with this stuff at all. So the Yoda was really intense enough to be strapped to his back. Not the case for situations that we're talking about, normal situations, but that teacher is close. They're right up with that student at first. And the objective is to get down the road and get it so that that student becomes more and more independent. They're moving out of that high challenge area to becoming familiar with what they need to learn, and they eventually get down there and become more and more independent. But this zone moves. It's not where it was where he first got in there, because that's over with. The initial stages are done, they're over with, and it kind of moves with that student, and he or she progresses to a point where they develop fully in that zone and learn whatever they had set out to do. So life has complications, and just like with Luke, he leaves early because he has to save the universe. And so he leaves early from his training, and Yoda, despite warnings from Yoda saying, oh, don't you do this, and he leaves early, faces the consequences. Darth Vader kicks his butt and all that kind of stuff. So there's consequences for not getting your proper training. And so, but life happens, and we have to understand that. Now, what happens in the zone, it's just more than a teacher and a student. So this teacher has to assess first. Remember, Yoda assessed. He has to assess first whether or not this student is capable of doing these things. Then once they understand that they're capable, they're willing, then they have to assess how they're going to train them. To what degree of intensity are they going to involve them in this process? Right up front, they got to do this high level of intensity, get them challenged right up front. And so this zone of proximal development, I think, is effective because it expands in many areas. Now, a lot of scholars might cringe at the fact that we're expanding Vygotsky's zone of proximal development outside of training students, but I think it's a worthwhile theory that can be expanded in other cases also. For example, another area of the zone of proximal development that it might apply to would be when I'm doing triathlons, and I had a dream of doing a full triathlon 20 years ago. That's how long ago it was. Now, when I first got this dream, I had no confidence in it at all, and I just wasn't aware that yeah, this is a possibility. So I had to get people coaching me and training me and teaching me, talking to them, and getting all this information that I needed up front. And as I got that more of the information, the zone moved for me. Now, it took me 20 years. That was a long time, but there was a bunch of other circumstances there too. But I eventually got to the point where I did accomplish that because I was in this zone of constantly keeping it on my mind, moving the zone further and further along so that I got confidence in it. Another example might be boxers. When that trainer first starts training a boxer, they don't put him in the ring with the world champion right off the bat to get pummeled and knocked out in the first 10 seconds. They work them along in this zone that is constantly developing their students and honing their skills. And if they don't become the world champion, that's not the end of the world. They maximize their effort as they were going along. So this is not simple teacher-student interaction. This zone is something special in the sense that when you can develop it both as a student and a teacher, you can look at this from both ends. The teacher's responsibility is to assess up front, make sure they can see this student that they're going to have the potential to do that. And then they've got to decide how to be tough, when to be easy, how to be encouraging, when to be challenging, when to taper off, and when to just kind of, shove them out of the nest so that they can fly on their own. Those are all key decisions that the teacher has to be in tune with in their skill set of how they do that. The student has to pick a good teacher, a zone of proximal development teacher. Now, so when you're taking courses in school, you would want to pick the courses of the teachers that are good teachers because they're in the zone. Now, if you don't have a choice and you have to pick a class that there's a teacher, doesn't matter what it is, you got to do everything in your power to get that teacher to pay attention to the degree that you need the help, you get the help that you need, whether it's through that teacher directly, or it's through a research assistant, or it's through a tutor, or it's through another student. You got to get in that first part of that zone, you've got to get that intense training in order to move that zone forward and to excel and do what you need to do as a student to accomplish what you want to. It's kind of like a tornado funnel. If you see a tornado is going around and it picks things up and it runs them through the funnel and it shoots them off somewhere, well, you're trying to actively progress up this spiral to grow, to learn, and to accomplish eventually what you want to, the goal that you want to achieve. Make life an auto zone of growth and development. That's the key. Just always want to be position yourself to succeed. You want to reduce life's twilight zones, just kind of floating around, not knowing what you're doing, where you're going, where you're headed. You want to get out of that twilight zone. You want to score consistently in the end zone of maximizing the goals that you set out to achieve. So, in other words, get in the zone of proximal development to give yourself every opportunity to succeed. If this video was helpful to you, or you think it would be helpful to somebody else, like it, share it, put it on your Facebook, share it to your Facebook feed, and put it on YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have an e-zine article on this, and you can tweet it, those kind of things, just to get it out so that people can see they have a lot of potential and move with their life in a positive direction. So this is Dr. Dan. Know where you're going with your life. Become the person you were destined to be and make a difference in the world. So those that have flow and are able to master it and practice it, they have a deep sense of purpose and meaning.